What I wanted to share was the insight that you don't need to be so afraid of making a mistake on the path to the truth or within spirituality. There's a lot of well meaning cautioning that goes on that I see in spiritual circles where it feels to me like there's two sides, so to speak. One side is cautioning people against identifying with thoughts and emotions and appearances or things that happen in the world. And there's a good reason for that. If you understand, for instance, the path of Advaita, you know that what is trying to be communicated is that what you essentially are is not synonymous with thoughts and emotions and the things that come up in the world. Boy, as I say this, I realize this is actually kind of tricky because it is and it isn't. If we believe that our thoughts are who we are or are what we are, then we're narrowing down something that is infinite into a particular box. We're narrowing down the vastness of what we really are on the ultimate level into a person, essentially, into a collection of ideas and thoughts and conditioning that seem to comprise what I am. So essentially what Advaita is trying to do is it's trying to show you that you're much more, something that is indefinable, something that is vast and infinite. And the way they do that is by showing you that those thoughts and emotions are actually appearing to you and in you versus being exactly the same as what you are. And so when those folks are trying to help someone, oftentimes they're reminding them to notice this, to notice that these things are just coming up and appearing, if there seems to be a direct identification going on. From the other quote-unquote side is almost more of a tantric approach, which is encouraging people to dive into experience and to realize that they are essentially the same as those things that are appearing. But it's a little bit tricky because what needs to be done is a diving straight into experience. And in the deepest experience of that, what we feel and recognize is that we cannot find a boundary or an end point where experience starts and we end, or vice versa. So if you dive into an emotion and you just go into it without trying to get rid of it, but just to feel into and see what is this thing and what is it made of, you essentially find out, oh my God, it's the same thing that I am. Not to say that I am an emotion, but what emotion is made out of and is coming up within is what I am. So the essential substrate of all experience is consciousness, which is what we are. And the crazy thing is that both approaches get you to the same place if you take them all the way in or out. Tantric goes out into experience, which then shows you there's no such thing as out. Everything is actually happening within and made out of what you are. Advaita brings you out into awareness, which you then figure out cannot actually be separated from experience. So no matter which direction you go, you're still moving inside of what you are. It's like a drop of water in the ocean. What direction can it go and not still be ocean? And so it is with humans. You can go as far in as you want, like through the realms of science, and essentially what you come to is emptiness or consciousness. You can go, what I mean is into the subatomic realm, tiny and tiny, tiny, tiny. Or you can go out into outer space and you essentially will come to the same conclusion. Oh my God, there's just more emptiness and it never ends. And so you're forced to go back in to see what is the nature of the one who's looking in both cases. You can't do it wrong. So I guess that's what I would want to convey, is that keep in mind that there's value in both approaches, and some speak to some temperaments more than others, and some will speak to one temperament part of the way along the journey and another, and then they will come around and see that there's value in the other one. That's exactly what happened with me. Advaita for me was a vital part of the path. I was so deeply identified with my emotions and my thoughts and my viewpoint and conditioning on life, on what life really was, that there was an immense amount of suffering as I experienced it. And so the Advaitic path, the process of neti saying not this, not this, was vital for me to be able to see that there was some distance between the things that were coming up in my mind and what I essentially was. So it allowed for there to be some discernment, some space injected in between these thoughts and ideas and emotions and what I was. That allowed me to dive deep in and to say, well, okay, so I know I'm not those things, but what the hell am I? If I'm not those things, and I'm supposedly witnessing them, and they're supposedly coming up in what I am, what the hell is this thing that I am, or this whatever? So for me, that was a beautiful process, and led to some really profound recognition of who I really am, what I really am. And then later I was able to see through Rupert Spira and others that the beautiful gift is that you then feel a pull to reintegrate, so to speak, to dive back into life and to feel and see and recognize that all of this experience, everything that you see and everything that's coming up is simply made out of what you are. So it's back to, as Rupert says, the path of inclusion. You begin with the path of exclusion, which is the Advaitic or Advaita Vedanta approach, which is excluding not this, to differentiate what you are. And then eventually it comes full circle into the path of inclusion, where you see that far from being a threat, that everywhere you look, as the Sufis say, is the face of God. You can't take one step outside of what you are. So to me, it's all one thing. As one teacher said, Vedanta and Tantra are two wings of the same bird. I thought that was quite beautiful. So I hope that conveyed what I was trying to get across, that we can just relax and trust. Because if your commitment is to the truth, and you know what I'm talking about if it is, you don't really, there isn't really a you that has a choice about it, if you know what I mean. The gig is up. You've seen too much and you can't back out. So you know that you're on this path, and there's no getting off. And if that resonates with you, then you understand what I'm saying when I say you don't need to fear. Because if you fixate on one point and you stick your flag in there and say, okay, this is it, this is the end, this is what I am, I don't need to know. If that isn't genuine, you will be notified by yourself. You will know by the suffering, the sense of claustrophobia, the sense of contraction, however it appears in your body and your being. Don't worry, you're going to find out that that's not the end point. that you don't want to fixate like that. The truth won't allow fixation. It is the opposite of fixation. It is open, limitless allowing of everything that's happening, everything that's coming up, irrespective of how the mind comments on it. The mind at its best can be an artist that collaborates with reality and paints beautiful images, whether it's with words or with paints or in pottery or in just living daily life. And the mind at its worst can be a heckler and a critic. But even in that role, it's beautiful because it will initiate suffering, which will ring the alarm bell in your being and let you know, oh, shit, I'm believing something untrue again. There's the suffering. There's the bell going off. It's time for me to investigate and see what's up. So, thank you.